Scripture passage today is the 62nd Psalm. And before I read this, let us pause for a moment in prayer. Gracious and Heavenly Father, as we come before your word today, Father, we know with our minds alone, Lord, we cannot understand these great mysteries that you have set before us, nor your word that you have given us. So we ask your Spirit to be with us. We ask that Spirit to enter our hearts and minds now, Lord, to teach us and instruct us, Lord, to illumine us as we seek out your way. Lord, bless this holy reading of your holy word. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. After we read this, there will be a brief moment of quiet meditation. This is the 62nd Psalm. Listen now to the word of the Lord. For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly shaken. How long will all of you attack a man to batter him, like a leaning wall, a tottering fence? They only plan to thrust him down from his high position. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God rests my salvation and my glory, my mighty rock. My refuge is God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. Put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love. For you will render to a man according to his work. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I'm going to tell you something that probably is not going to surprise you. When I was a kid, I didn't like to clean my room. And I know that's a big shock. That's the first thing kids love to do is to go clean their room. Adults don't even always like cleaning their room. But I always hated cleaning my room, and I shared a room with my brother. And we had these, wasn't too big of a room, but we could make an incredible mess in that little room. You wouldn't believe it. We had these twin beds, and they weren't that big of beds, but we could fit a lot of stuff under those beds. I mean, every time it was time to clean our room, part of that meant some stuff just went under the bed. I mean, everything. It didn't matter what it was. Toys, books, clothes, didn't matter. I mean, Sunday morning I was digging my khaki pants out from under the bed to put them on, and I could have been digging my blazer out of the toy box. I'm not kidding either. It was like a wrinkle from my shoulders all the way down to the hem of my pants. One big giant wrinkle. But we could get away with it as long as we didn't put too much stuff under the bed. But sometimes if the room was really messy and we were just eager to get it done quick, we would just shove it all under there. I mean, it was like an excavator, just pushing it all under the bed. And it would get so stuffed, you would walk in, you could see it hanging out the bottom of the bed. Now, my brother and I, we had an idea, though. We were clever. So this, since our bed was against the wall, when we had everything shoved under the bed where you could see it spilling out, we would just make the bed, we'd hang the sheet all the way down to the floor. I mean, it looked weird, but you couldn't see under the bed now. Well, it didn't fool my mom. She would have walked right in, and she would know immediately that we had stuffed everything under the bed. And so she'd pull the sheet aside and just put her arm in there, just rip it all out. And there was this awful pile of mess now in the middle of the floor that we had to deal with. And I always said the same thing to my mom. I was like, Mom, You've just made the room messier now. I had it clean and you just made it messy. My mom always said the same thing to me. Sometimes it's going to have to get dirtier before it gets cleaner. And that was true. Sometimes things have got to get messier before you can make them cleaner. Now, I'm saying this to you by way of an analogy. I'm saying that because none of us really have a clean room. Now, what do I mean by a room? I'm talking about our life. I'm talking about our heart. Well, what's deep inside our heart and in our life? We've all got mess. We don't like to talk about it. We like to pretend we don't have a mess, that our room is always clean, but it's really not. All of us have mess in our life. And what do I talk about when I say mess? What do I mean? I'm talking about all those things that we like to stuff under the bed, that we like to hide away so nobody else can see. Things like our anger, our resentment, our disappointment. We had our griefs, our heartaches. We had our loss, our fear, our pain, our weakness, our insecurities. Maybe we're hiding hatreds or grudges. We had all our unresolved issues, cramming them under the bed because, well, we like to hide our mess. And there's a lot of reason why we hide our mess. Sometimes we hide it because we're scared. We don't know what people are going to think of us if they see that part of our life. Sometimes we hide it out of pride. We just want everyone to think that we have got it all together and we don't have any problems at all. Sometimes we hide it just because it's good manners to hide your mess sometimes. You don't want to go pouring your heart out to everybody you meet. Hey, how you doing? How you doing today? Well, I'm struggling with crippling insecurities I've had since childhood trauma. Other than that, I'm doing okay. I'm not talking to you again. Sometimes we hide it out of legitimate fear. We don't know what other people are going to do if we pour our heart out to them and to give them all of our mess and be completely open. We don't know if we can trust them. We don't know if they're going to understand what we're going through, and chances are they won't understand. We don't know if they might go gossip and tell everybody they know what we just revealed to them. We don't know how they're going to react. And I'm going to tell you, it's okay with people to hide your mess. It's okay. You don't have to be totally open with everybody all the time. However, what happens is that we tend to get into that habit with God. And we try to hide our mess from Him. Look, Lord, my room is clean. Look at this. No mess at all. Do you believe it? He doesn't believe it. My mom wasn't fooled by everything that I hid under the bed, and God's not fooled when you try to hide your mess from Him. And like I said, it's okay in human relationships not to have total and 100% openness and transparency. We don't need that with everybody. And actually, the more intimate you become with a person, the more that you open up to them. The more you share a little bit of that mess. But with God, however, what God requires of us is at some point in our life for us to have total intimacy with God. I know we're not all there, and it's not easy to get there, but God at one point is going to require of us total and absolute intimacy. And the truth is, your relationship with God is only as healthy as your honesty and openness towards Him. Your relationship with the Lord is only as healthy as your honesty and openness towards Him is. So this brings us to the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms, a big beefy part right there in the middle of the Bible, smack dab in the middle, 150 chapters, one of the longest books in the Bible, and what I would claim is the greatest collection of poetry in the world. The book of Psalms. Now most of the Psalms are written by King David. Not all of them were, but most of them were. Some are written by a guy named Asaph. I don't know who that is. And some by the sons of Korah. I have no idea who that is either. And a lot of the Psalms have no authorship at all. We don't know who wrote them. They were collected over many, many years. And it's just the beautiful religious poetry that fills the Bible. And there's many topics that Psalms go through, but there's a similarity to all of them. There is this one similarity you can find in all of the Psalms, and that is whoever wrote these Psalms were pouring their heart out to God. And that's what characterizes what a psalm is pouring your heart out to God. Some of you may wonder why I started today at Psalm 62. Maybe there's some of the OCD type around us that don't like, why do you start at 62, 1, when you start at the beginning, and then go through chronologically? I started today at 62 because this is a great psalm that describes what a psalm is supposed to be. Particularly in verse 62:8. I want to read it to you. Trust in him at all times, O people. He's talking about the Lord. Trust in the Lord at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Trust in the Lord. Pour your heart out to God and trust him. Of all the types of poetry that you can write, religious poetry is the most difficult. There are more bad religious poems out there than any other type of poetry, probably all of them combined. In fact, if you want to look at love poetry, you see that you can get like a big volume of really good love poetry. But if you want to get good religious poetry, the books get a lot smaller and smaller and smaller, and the quality goes noticeably down. And I was reading, Richard Niebuhr wrote about this actually. He was wondering, why is it so hard to write good religious poetry? Well, the reason why is because when people write religious poetry, they're not being honest. When people write a love poem, they're telling you exactly how they feel. I mean, they're just laying their feelings out you completely. But when people write religious poetry, they're not telling you how they feel. They're telling you how they're supposed to feel. And that always ends up making bad poetry. In fact, if you're talking about how you're supposed to feel and how you really feel, you're not writing poetry. What you're writing is propaganda. And reading a poem like that is like watching state television in a communist nation. Like, man, this stuff is terrible. Or it's like watching a movie out of New Hollywood. You know they got an agenda. You can see it from the opening scene. You're like, you're trying to indoctrinate me here. But the Psalms aren't like that. The Psalms are not like that at all. All through this book, this beautiful book, you have men and maybe women too. Like I said, there are a lot of Psalms that we don't know who the author is. Maybe some of the women wrote those. But all through this book, you have people that are laying bare their deepest heart before God. And that is what makes the Psalms so powerful. And that makes them so wonderful, is people pouring out their heart to God. There's a lot of honesty in this book. There's a lot of honesty. And I think as you read through it, you'll find some parts in there where the honesty is not only shocking, sometimes it's brutal. And as we read through the Psalms, it's going to completely contradict this image that we get in our head of the believer always being joyful, always being happy, and always having it together. Right? What's the thing that Christians are supposed to say when they see each other? How you doing? Oh, I'm thankful and blessed. How are you? Are you thankful and blessed too? Because I'm blessed. I'm always blessed. Aren't you? You're not blessed? How come you're not blessed? Because I'm blessed. That's what I am. I'm blessed. Are you blessed too? But we don't find that in Psalms. I'm going to share with you some of the emotions that we get in the book of Psalms. Out of Psalm 38, he says, "There is no soundness in my flesh because of your indignation, God. There is no health to my bones because of my sin. My wounds stink and fester because of my foolishness. I am utterly bowed down and prostrate. All the day I go about mourning." Or in Psalm 10, "Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble?" In Psalm 13, he says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" Probably the psalm we've all heard before, Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Doesn't sound very happy and blessed, does it? Doesn't sound happy and blessed at all. Instead, you got a lot of honesty. Hey, how you doing today? My wounds stink and fester because of my foolishness. How are you doing? But this is the brutal honesty that we see in the book of Psalms, and it's not just the honesty that we see. Sometimes it's not always good what's written in Psalms. Probably one of the most brutal and violent things I've ever heard written down is in the book of Psalms. And I hesitated to share it today, but I want to share it today just to show to you just the total and abject honesty and openness we see in this book. It comes out of Psalm 137, and the writer says, "By the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and wept for thee, Zion." It's a psalm written by a slave, and he's suffering under his persecution. At the end of the psalm, this is what he says: "Blessed is he who takes your little ones and dashes them against a rock." That's pretty dark stuff. You ask, why would anybody even want to write something like that? Like, I want to kill your children. Like I said, it was written by a slave, a man who we don't have no idea what kind of things that he had to endure. He lived in Jerusalem. His city was attacked by Babylon. His friends were killed. His house was burned right before his very eyes. He was carted off to a foreign country to serve a foreign master. He had to watch his own children be sold into slavery. He had to watch his wife perhaps killed or even violated before his very eyes. The psalm was written by someone who was pouring out an almost inconsolable anger to God. By the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and we wept for thee, Zion. It's not an example of what we should feel. It was somebody pouring their heart out to God. So yeah, as you read through the Psalms, you're going to find Psalms of anger and Psalms of complaint, but they're not endorsing anger and complaint. In fact, most of them come around at the very end. They'll start out complaining, "Lord, where are you? Lord, why do you make me suffer? Lord, my life is awful and you've abandoned me. But I know you're still there. I know you still love me. This doesn't make any sense at all to me right now. But I still trust you, Lord." And that's what makes these Psalms so effective, is their honesty. They're pouring out their heart to God. And God can't change anything in us if we don't first bring it to Him. And if it's on your heart, let me tell you, God already knows it's there. You're not fooling Him at all. By hiding your feelings from God, by hiding your heart from God, all you're doing is keeping Him from being able to lay His hand upon it. Now, I want to step back for a minute because I don't want to misrepresent the Psalms. Okay? Not all the Psalms are gloomy and complaining. All right? Most of the Psalms are quite joyful. Most of the Psalms are a lot of "I'm thankful and I'm blessed." And at the same time, I don't want to misrepresent the human heart as well, because I know we've got a lot of stuff under our bed, and I know we've got some mess that we hide away, but there is more to your life than the mess you hide away. There is more to your life than any of your insecurities or issues or fear. There's a whole lot more to it. And some days we feel the joy and the power of being God's children, and our heart just overflows, and that's honestly who we are. In the Psalms, we see again and again just a whole range of feelings expressed in this book. Most of the Psalms are written about praise. Like, your Lord, you, O Lord, your power, greatness endures forever. We see thanksgiving in the Psalms. Give thanks to the Lord, for His steadfast love endures forever. We see complaint and fear in the Psalms, and we've mentioned that already. We hear Psalms where there's intercession, where people are asking, "Lord, help Jerusalem, help your people. Lord, help your anointed one." We hear Psalms of wisdom, reflecting on the benefits of following God. We have Psalms of faith, expressing confidence in God, perhaps the most famous being, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." We even have Psalms about the king. Psalms that are respecting the order and the authority that God has given His agents on earth. Psalms that you could even consider to be patriotic parts of the Bible. All throughout this book, you see the entire range of human emotions, and that's what makes them so powerful, is their honesty. People pouring out their heart to God. Friends, to pour out your heart to God is to trust Him with your deepest heart. It's an act of faith. To pour out your heart to God is to trust Him with your deepest hurt. But it's also to trust Him with your deepest joy and with your deepest thanksgiving. And to say to Him all those corny things that you're too embarrassed to say out loud in front of all the people. Pouring your heart out to God is trusting Him like you trust no one else. And that's honestly one of the few things that we can give to God. I mean, God has everything. The only thing we can truly give Him is our heart and our openness and our honesty to say, Lord, here, take it. Take this heart of mine, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's yours. So, I mentioned I have a homework assignment for you. I am going to assign you a homework for this summer. Not only I want you to do your devotions, read the Psalms. This summer, I want you to write a psalm. I know, yes, write a psalm. Now, I'm going to say from the outset, I know that this assignment has got no teeth at all, okay? There's no grade. I don't have a book. I'm not having your name, checking anybody off. You can walk away and just ignore me. I know that. But I'm asking you to do this not for me, but for you. That this is to use this and incorporate as part of your worship life. Now, most of you are saying, I got no idea how to write a psalm. It's simple. Pour your heart out to God. Maybe you're saying, I'm no good with words. That's okay. Just pour your heart out to God. Nobody has to see this. No one has to judge this. This is just between you and God. And I know some of you are worried what's there. I say, pour your heart out to God. Like, wait a minute. I got some dark stuff in my heart. I don't know if you want me pouring this out. Well, is it any worse than what we read from Psalm 137? Can you compare with what he said when he says, blessed are he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock? Now, I know we got some dark stuff in us, but I'm pretty confident that you haven't gotten to that level yet. Besides, if you have some darkness on your heart, God already knows it's there. To pour it out to Him is just to give Him a chance to work with it, to lay it before Him, to say, what can we do now? And like my mom always said, it's like cleaning a house. Sometimes it's going to get messier before it gets cleaner. The first step is bringing it before the Lord. And it doesn't have to be gloomy. Okay, it doesn't have to be gloomy or complaining. If you write a psalm, what it needs to be is whatever is on your heart. If there's praise on your heart that day, write praise. If there's thanksgiving, write thanksgiving. If you're scared about something, write about that fear. If you have a need, write about that need. If you're feeling strong, affirm that strength. And write about that. Use this as part of your devotion for you drawing close to God. If you want to, burn it as soon as you're done. Nobody has to see it. However, I would like to know how it works out. I would like for you to let me know, if you do this, that you wrote a psalm and how it helped, if it was just pointless and you hated it and you're never doing it again, or actually heard God speaking to you in your life as you poured your heart out to Him. It would be even better if you let me share it, because you never know who you're going to encourage and inspire through your words. You never know when someone's going to say, you know what, I thought I was the only one that had been going through something like that. I'm so grateful I'm not. It's up to you, okay? This is your conversation with God. This is your pouring out. Just give it an honest try for me, okay? Just think about it at least. If nothing else, just pour your heart out to God. Either in your speech or in your prayers or even just driving in your car alone, take a minute during your day to pour out your heart to God. You're not telling Him anything He doesn't already know. But what you are doing is trusting Him with the deepest, most vulnerable part of who we are. Think about it. Think about it. Start reading your Psalms. Search your heart. See what's there. Start writing it down. No matter how ugly or unpoetic it sounds, just start writing. Just pour your heart out to Him and see where God leads you. I think you'll discover that the journey with God isn't always a pretty one, but it is a good one. Trust in Him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before God, for He is a refuge for us. To God be all the glory, forever and ever. Amen.